Welcome, everybody, to the Week 15 edition of The Pack. Uh, Here I am, Eli Berkovitz, with Nathan Marzion, special guest. Really appreciate you taking the time, Nathan, to come on this week. Especially, I thought when I invited you, probably going to have a bit of a cheerier episode coming up, but last night was last night. I think anyone watching uh, knows exactly what I'm talking about. Before we get into that, though, Nathan, again, thank you for coming on. How have you been? It's been a while since we've been on a show together, at least, probably a season or two. But how you doing? I know, obviously, your fandom of the Bucks. I don't keep as much up with basketball. So how have they been so far this year with Damian Lillard?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. And the Bucks, it's been a rocky-ish start. People expected them to be, I think, it's better and just looking better out of the gates than they have been, but they're still winning games. I mean, they're 16-7 now, so they're getting wins. They're just kind of uglier wins. We're hoping that they just look better as the season goes on. But yeah, I mean, it's been still fun to have, they have their best team probably right now that they've ever had. So at least talent-wise. And it'll be exciting as the season goes on, as we get closer to April, May, that they start to look better. They start to hit their groove a little bit and hopefully can win another championship coming up here. But yeah, last night was definitely disappointing for the Packers. I had the Bucks game on as well. I had the Packer game on and at the same time. And for a little bit, it looked like, okay, they're both looking good. They both might win. Then all of a sudden it was like, okay, they both might lose. And then in the end, I
Yeah,
was like, well, we went 1 for 2. Obviously the Packer game was more important, but I was like, at least the Bucks won. But both teams kind of played ugly, kind of had a not their best games.
yeah. I mean, being from Chicago, I'm not a huge NBA fan. I guess I would lean a bit towards the Bulls, but I also like the Bucks, which I know kind of doesn't make sense. But so last night, yeah, it ended up being an entertaining game, but I'm perfectly fine that the Bucks ended up coming out on top. But yeah, getting to the Packer game, I mean, I don't know why. Going into it, I just kind of had like this ominous feeling. I think maybe just being a Packer fan, we've seen so many times going into games where it's like, oh, we got this. We just beat the best team in the league or one of the best teams in the league. We're going to beat this team. And then, even with Rodgers, we saw plenty of these games be struggles. Usually they come out on top. And I think last night they had those chances. But I think if we're being honest, they probably deserved to lose that game last night. So just general, broad coming away from that game. How are you feeling? Obviously you have 3 wins in a row against some good teams. And then that game, are you looking at the 3 games and being like, all right, this team is still capable of that? Or are you seeing more concerns now after last night's performance?
I definitely think it's with most things, I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like I don't think they'll be as good as they were in that 3 game stretch, but I don't think yesterday was kind of the perfect recipe to lose a game like this. It was like
Yeah,
they just kind of did everything wrong. And it's like if you're drawing up a game plan for this game, it's like, okay, don't let them beat you on the ground, make DeVito beat you with his arm, don't turn the ball over and give them short fields. Don't do anything dumb on special teams. And it's like they just checked every box of like, don't do
yeah,
this, don't do this, don't do this. And that's how you lose games like that. I had the very bad feeling about the game going in. Like I had that feeling where I was like, yeah, it feels like, we're almost getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, a little bit like, okay, they're gonna win out. And it feels you're getting a little too comfortable. And I'm like, this is still a young team. This is still a team that you can't fully trust. And that's okay, that they're growing and everything. But it was also the first game in like honestly, maybe a couple months that they were actually like people actually were very confident they were going to win because they were going on that losing streak where everyone just kind of lost all confidence. And then even those 3 games they won, I don't think any one of those people were super confident they were going to win. So it was like, man, this is the first time in a while that it's just like everyone feels like the Packers are going to win this game. And again, I was like, it's on the road, and then they just feel like they're due for a bad game. I kind of felt like I told my friends, I told people, I was like, I think they're going to lose, and I hate saying that. Like I don't want to predict them to lose to the Giants, but I just had this feeling, and kind of midway through the game, you're kind of like, okay, it's uglier. It's uglier than you want it to be, but they still, even with checking all those boxes of everything they shouldn't do, they still almost won this game because they almost were, they gifted that fumble at the end, and it was like, okay, they're gonna escape, but Joe Barry had to come through one last time for us,
yeah,
and yeah, so that was not fun, but overall, I'm not letting this one like I said, this isn't something that was super shocking to me. I'm not letting it totally change my view on this team. I still think as I did before this game, I was like, I don't think they're as good as the last 3 games have shown. I think they'll come back down to earth a little bit, but I still think they're capable of, getting into the playoffs. I think they're still a pretty good team that can make a little bit of noise here and should be able to handle business in, at least probably 3 of these last 4 games. Definitely 2, I think, but probably 3. And, you should be able to get into the playoffs at that point. So, I still feel okay about them. I'm not letting this thing completely change it. It just was a disappointing game that you kind of saw coming a little bit.
Yeah, I think I saw if they go 3-1, they have a 90% chance of making it. So they still have some room for error, but obviously, things can change a lot. Sunday versus the Bucks, who, we kind of looked at this part of the schedule, like we get past the Chiefs, and it's like, oh, I mean, these are cakewalks, but the Bucks, they're a good team. They have a solid defense. Mike Evans continues to be Mike Evans, and Baker's been pretty good for them. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, getting into Joe Barry and this defense, I mean, it's like every week you think he simply doesn't know the offense he's about to prepare for in any sort of way. And it's like, how could you possibly be doing this? And then obviously, you want to fast forward, even though there was plenty of issues, but fast forward to that last drive. And it's like literally calling plays like, all right, we've got like a 13, 16 point lead. There's 3 minutes left. There's no way they can win. Let them take as many yards as you want. Even if it's one thing if like they were up by 6 or 7 and they knew they needed a touchdown. Okay, you want to give them some yards, sure, but to give away 3 yards when it was simply a 1-point game, get in field goal range and you win, it's like I just don't know how you could be an NFL coach and think like, yeah, we could just play 10 yards back. I don't know if you saw some of the clips going pretty viral where the screenshots where the corners aren't even on the screen. They're that far back. So, I mean, people wanted to talk the last, handful of weeks. The defense has been better. The numbers and the points per game and all that. But I think most people, I mean, a lot of people see it as kind of a fraud and just circumstance and coincidence and stuff like that. Where do you see it? I mean, I would have to assume, but maybe I'm wrong. Are you ready to see Joe Barry no longer coaching this defense as soon as possible?
Yes, I am very ready for that. And I'm definitely one of those people that even, over those last few weeks was saying, hey, I don't really think this defense has been that good. I think they're getting a little bit lucky. That Chargers game was when it really started where I'm like, this dude's going to save his job because they gave up only 20 points to the Chargers. But I'm like, they dropped 3 touchdown passes. Like this should have been 35 plus points, and it looks fine. It looks like, oh, we held the Chargers, who are a good offense, to 20 points. I'm like, the defense was not good. And in all these games, it's like they're usually pretty good at limiting the point total, which I know is the main point of defense. It's like they don't give up a ton of points, but you still like, I'm like, they don't make their like imprint on a game ever. It's kind of just like the other team just kind of can do whatever they want. And then all of a sudden they'll tighten up a little bit in the red zone and okay, they'll force a field goal, or maybe they'll luck into some turnover or something that shifts momentum and blah blah blah. But I'm like they consistently are giving up usually like around 400 yards of offense to all these teams, and it's like teams just are able to move the ball on us at will. It feels like, and 200 plus rushing yards again last night, which is the 4th time they've allowed it this season, and no other team has.
And it wasn't
more
even
than 2.
Saquon, which is just crazy.
Yeah, DeVito had 71 rushing yards on us, and it's like, dude, it's just infuriating, and it's something that like I just waited so long. We've waited so long to have to just have a good Packers defense, and it's like they've invested the picks into it. They've invested they have talent on that side of the ball, and I'm so sick of just not living up to their potential on that side because of the coordinators, because of the coaching, because of the schemes. And yeah, I mean, last night, no sacks, no pass breakups, only 2 quarterback hits. It's like they just don't make their presence really felt out there. And sure, late in the game, it's like you've only allowed 21 points, which isn't terrible, but still, it's like they just did not ever like feel like they were playing a good defensive game, and teams just kind of do whatever they want on them pretty easily. And of course, it gets down to that last possession, and it's like they do this bend but don't break thing all the time. And it's like, okay, well, now you can't even bend because you can't allow a field goal. Like you can't bend. And they just take 3 easy passes here.
It
And get
wasn't
right
even
down
like
the
let's bend. It was like just we're not even going to try.
yeah,
Just literally
just go ahead. It
just do
was
it.
yeah. And again, it's just very, very frustrating. So I am definitely ready for it. I think that I really want to see Love in this offense as they progress and take steps, in the coming years. I want to see them have a defense that can hold up as well and can kind of complement them and not be something that they have to overcome on top of being a young team and on top of going through these growing pains offensively. To have to deal with a bad defense on top of that is just like, I don't want to deal with that. Please just give Jordan Love a good defense, give him a good team around him, and we'll see what he is after that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we're not talking about top five kind of defense, elite kind of defense. I think just like we were saying with Rodgers, just don't be the reason we're going to lose. Don't make it a huge issue. And like you were saying, teams aren't racking up a ton of points, but I think like kind of what you said, it's they're basically getting to do what they want and taking these long drives. Seems like every time we give up points, it's like 10 plus plays, 7 or 8 minutes. Okay, so then you're going to limit possessions, which is great, but you're still giving up yards. You're still giving up at least some amount of points. And yeah, I mean, going back to the Charger game, I mean, it wasn't just drops. Like to see Keenan Allen drop a bunch of touchdowns, and then I think Austin Eckler fumbled the ball like at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
But essentially, no one touched him. And then last night, Saquon fumbled the ball. No one touched him. Like you're getting so lucky. I mean, last night, if they won that game, I mean, no one's talking about it today, but I don't know the last time I saw any player, let alone a player of Saquon's caliber, simply fumble the ball with no contact. And we almost won the game because of it. And still, Barry made sure with 1 minute and 20 seconds left to just give them as much space as they wanted. I mean, Tommy DeVito threw 4 incompletions last night. It's pathetic. No sacks on a team that gave up 69 sacks coming into the game, which is insane. So Joe Barry is, I mean, I guess it's not news. He's problematic. He's got to go. But I think what did change last night, at least from the last few weeks, was Matt LaFleur's play calling, at least to me, was some of the most asinine play calling I could remember in a long time. And I'm not even just talking about the reverses, which we'll obviously have to talk about, because I felt like my nephew playing Madden, where he's like, oh, that play looks really cool. I'm going to keep doing it and hope it works out. Like, it made no sense, but also just the whole night, Love was a little bit off, and he kept trying to go back to it. And also, I thought A.J. Dillon and Patrick Taylor were running pretty well, and they were kind of getting away from it, even though the game was never really out of hand. So overall this season, I mean, I have always been kind of pretty critical of Matt LaFleur, to be honest. But your general sense on LaFleur, I guess, through most of this season, and then obviously the last few weeks were a lot better. And then we see what we saw last night. So, like, where's your head at right now with LaFleur and his play calling?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty in line with you. And again, I also the last few weeks I was like, hey, maybe I owe this dude an apology. Like he's looked a lot better. The offense is clicking. He's pushing more of the right buttons. And then again, they go back. It did feel like I was like, I feel like he's got some bad game cooked up in him. Like it's coming. And sure enough, it was like you're watching it unfold. And again, it was just another night where it feels like he's like, as you said, it's like he's going a little bit too like, okay, Love's a little bit off and they're forcing that a little bit too much. And then they're not going to the run enough at times. And then it's like sometimes it flips and it's like, okay, now you're not passing when you should be. And they're just not clicking. He just doesn't click the right buttons all the time. And he doesn't get creative enough with, they think they're getting creative with these Jaden Reed things. And it's like, okay, maybe run that once a game instead of 5 times. Like, okay, let's relax on it a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that, like, I will say, I thought there were, there were times maybe that guys did get schemed open and Love missed them. It wasn't like, I'm not going to sit there and say that LaFleur wasn't able to scheme anyone open all night. I thought he did an okay job of getting guys open, and yeah, Love missed them. And there were times I'm sure, I saw there was times he was frustrated on the sidelines at that. You can kind of see he's like, man, we had the right play call that just Love missed him. Yeah, sure. But there's also plenty of times that it's like, dude, what are you doing? And then that they also completely, and it didn't really end up mattering that much, I don't think, but they completely wasted their challenge on that one that was like blatantly, obviously a catch.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, backers are challenging. Okay, great. Well, there goes our challenge. Like, that's awesome. So that type of thing.
Emotional challenge.
Yeah, like that type of thing just makes me upset where I'm like, come on, Matt, like just chill for a sec. And so yeah, it wasn't his finest game. And like I said, this was kind of just an all around, they just played the exact way you have to play to lose a game like this. It was bad play from the quarterback, turnovers, special teams was bad, defense, let them just completely gash you on the run. Bad game from LaFleur. You give up a game winning drive. miss a field goal, all this stuff. It's just
Yeah,
like
it
they
piled
just
up.
found every way. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it really was all three phases. And I mean, before we jump into special teams, which was also a major issue, but for me, like LaFleur, I didn't think he was good all night, but kind of what really was like shocking to me was that last sequence of plays where I think they got a first and goal after the 2 minute warning. And like, obviously, it's no given you're going to score, but you're inside the 10-yard line. And he doesn't even attempt to run the ball one time where I mean, you're probably not going to score, but you get the Giants to either use timeouts or you take the clock and you either score and win or you don't score and the game's over. But just throw, throw, throw. So the Giants had way more time after we did score eventually. And then obviously the 2 point conversion call was, I mean, maybe the dumbest call I've seen Matt LaFleur make. Like, even if the reverses were working all night long, I don't care if Jaden Reed had 200 yards rushing. You're at the 2 yard line. You need a 2 point conversion to make it a 3 point game. And you give the guy the ball 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage and expect him to get it in when it hasn't even been working all night. It was extremely frustrating and just didn't make sense. I thought A.J. Dillon or Taylor could have ran it in or just throw the ball and see what happens. But another game-changing play, and this goes back to the special teams, was, of course, Keyshawn Nixon and that fumble. That was, I mean, it was awful. Like, that was one of the, like, I couldn't believe, like, I know he likes being aggressive and he wants to make a play. But I don't know the last time I saw a guy muff a punt, get on top of it, and then get back up with the ball. That's just pretty unheard of. So, I mean, Rich Bisaccia, we saw the stat last night, most penalized special teams unit in the NFL. Of course, you have Carlson missing kicks. You have Nixon, it's not an often occurrence, but last night it was a pretty major error. How do you feel right now that Rich Bisaccia is the highest paid special teams coach in the NFL?
Not great. Not great.
Yeah,
And
great.
this is just, I mean, it's the same with the defense, where this is like the same song we've been singing for so long now, where it's just like the special teams has been, it's hurt them so much over the years, and the defense has hurt them so much over the years. And it's like, you now have these same problems, but you don't have the all-time great quarterback to make up for it. And it's like, this is what leads to you just being kind of a mediocre middle of the pack team. And it's like, man, they've got to do something about those two units. They've got to do something to make them not be negative every year, because again, that's how you lose football games like this. Like, that's how you don't take care of business, is when you're just playing at such a disadvantage, because your defense is going to give up 200 rushing yards and you're going to make a couple of special teams miscues, and that's like, that could be the difference in the game. And that's how you let teams in these games. If you just don't make those mistakes against a bad team like this, you're probably going to win. And they would have won this game if they didn't fumble that, they didn't miss that field goal. They would have won this game. But it's like, this is how you lose. You
Yeah.
let teams in games like this because you make those stupid mistakes, and their mistakes and the penalties and all that stuff. Like, we've seen that over the years, over and over and over. And again, it's just so frustrating that they can't get kind of these things nailed down. It's like, it's just been so long of complaining about the same things with this team. And as I said, they don't have now the offense to completely make up for it and like still win a bunch of games despite having a bad defense, despite having poor special teams. And now it's like, you're just kind of a pretty bad team. They're not terrible, but you're just not that good of a team.
Yeah, when you don't have someone that you at any week he can put up 35 plus points or make some miracle comeback, and maybe Love can be that one day, but we know he's not that yet, and that's not a discredit to him. It's his first year. Rodgers wasn't that his first year either. But yeah, like you said, it feels like regardless of the coach, the regime, and now even quarterback and whole new kind of team, the same issues just follow them, whether it's the defense can't stop the run, special teams consistently struggling. I don't know if you saw Mike Daniels' tweet last night where he basically said he's like, I don't get it how this team is always so soft. And he's like, I played alongside, Hall of Fame level talents, and it was the same thing. And now we're 10 years later and they play the same way. And then someone replied to him about how they loved his energy, that. And he said that most of the team hated the fact that his personality was so aggressive and like outgoing, which to me is insane. And you want to have more guys like that. And this team, we said it in 2014 and now it's 2023. Like, they're soft. Like, there is a part of them that is just kind of soft. It's like, it's just, I guess, their identity. But when you go and you give up 200 yards rushing week after week, and then 70 of them are from a quarterback who's not a runner, and then you have 36 yards from a receiver. It's just like these are things that simply can't happen, and it happens not just year after year, but coordinator to coordinator, whether it was Capers, Petten, now Joe Barry. So it's like they just need something new, and I know it's pretty unlikely, and it's probably not going to happen. But I think a lot of people on Twitter have been floating the idea of Al Harris, who's been getting a lot of hype in Dallas right now. That would be pretty fun. I can't speak to exactly how great he is at his job, but I think it would be pretty cool. But it's just, like you said, it's so frustrating to see where it's like, what your issues are going into each week. What like you've got to work on, and it just feels like they just totally don't even pay attention to it. So overall, very frustrating performance last night. And also there were some injuries that came out of it, not a ton, but Dontavian Wicks was quoted saying his ankle was pretty fucked up. So it seems like he has some sort of high ankle sprain, which is not good considering he's been pretty good, at least for where he was drafted and how much he plays. So he might not play next week. And I believe Jaden Reed was evaluated for a concussion. I don't think they ever declared if he has one yet, but we're looking at a pretty, not great chance, but a decent chance next week. They don't have Christian Watson, Reed, Wicks, Aaron Jones, or Luke Musgrave. How would you feel going into that game if, I guess what, we would have Dobbs, Heath, and Toure?
Can we just flip the Panthers and Buccaneers games on our schedule so we play the Panthers next week? Like, is that possible? Yeah. But yeah, nice. It would be one of the worst possible situations a rookie or first year starting quarterback could ever be in, of just like not having people around you. That would be it. And that's the other frustrating thing that we saw at the beginning of the year, where it was like, how do you really evaluate Love in these type of games where it's like, okay, he doesn't have much around him, and yeah, sure, he missed a couple throws, but he's not really that comfortable. And it's like, you can't blame him for not being comfortable because he doesn't have Jones. He doesn't have, he didn't have Dobbs, Watson, all these guys. And it's just, it's a frustrating thing because it's like supposed to be an evaluation year. It's supposed to be a year where, even no matter how they look, you want to be able to assess what you have, and you want to be able to see these young guys play, see them develop. And so for them to be missing some games, for them to be hurt, and to not have Jones out there for a lot of this, and to not have Bakhtiari, that is a huge thing as well. It's like, it just makes everything a little bit murkier, harder to evaluate. And I wouldn't love our chances if those guys aren't playing. Again, it's going to be hard to win a game with that few good skill position players on the field. But again, it's not like the Buccaneers are great or anything, but I do think they have enough that they could definitely beat us in Lambeau, if all those injuries are there.
Yeah. One bright spot, though, that I guess I should have mentioned when I just listed off the guys is Tucker Kraft, who, since Musgrave has gone out, has really stepped up in a way that, at least for the first 2 months of the season, I don't think many people thought, at least as a rookie, we were going to see this. But last night, led the team in receiving, 4 catches for 64 yards, obviously caught his first touchdown a few weeks ago, and has become more and more a part of this offense. So I just think looking at what him and Musgrave can turn into in the future is really exciting, because we haven't seen really a single competent tight end in a while. Now there could be 2, and obviously you add all the young receivers on top of that. I do think, like, another person I give a lot of criticism towards is Goody, because he just does things, not all the time, but a lot of the time, that I don't necessarily agree with. But I do have to give him credit that, 2 years ago, not a single one of our skill players, at least catching the ball, was on this team. And for him to have drafted all these receivers, the tight ends, signed Malik Heath, even Ben Sims, has made some contributions to the tight end 3. Like, he really reconfigured this entire offense in just 2 off seasons, which I don't think a lot of GMs are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to mention that too, of Kraft was definitely, like, if you had to pick one bright spot, it was him. I mean, he had twice as many yards as the next highest receiver. And I know he had the 43 yarder, so that definitely helped. But, as you said, it's nice that they have these young skill position guys that you have some hope for and that can develop and alongside Love. So it's like you can see the vision, you can see where it's going. If it all works out, it kind of matches up, it kind of aligns. So Yeah, I definitely do give him credit for that as well, and um, it's something that I think if they had, again, if they had Love and it was just a bunch of mediocre, older type of players at these skill positions, it's like you'd kind of be like, okay, you kind of have your quarterback, but you're totally got to reconfigure everything around it. You don't really feel like that. You feel like, okay, they've got their pieces, they've got something in line, they've got some good tight ends here. And it's like, okay, now just kind of plug in some of these gaps. And, okay, if this receiver doesn't work out, you might have to get a new one, blah, blah, blah. But they've got the pieces in place. And so that either way, no matter how this season ends, it's like I'm glad there's stuff to be excited about on that offensive end. And there's, a path to being successful in the future and being, getting better and better. It's like you don't think at all that this is like as good as this offense is going to be. This is like, okay, this is just the beginning for all these guys. It's like, there's a lot of hope for the future for this.
Yeah, I think the whole offseason, everyone was talking about Love, and he's going to get to grow with all these young receivers. And it was a nice sentiment, but we weren't really sure how it was going to work out going through the season. But even just through this one season, I think we've seen the growth from all over, whether it's Love, Jaden Reed, Dobbs, Kraft. I mean, all these guys, obviously Watson, the way he started, the way he's been playing the last few weeks. Hopefully he gets back sooner than later. But yeah, I think this offseason will probably be the first in a long time where I don't expect I mean, I'm sure people will still cry for a wide receiver in the first round because it's Packers Twitter, but I don't think it's warranted or needed in any way. I think they have their guys they could grow with. And like you said, if they need to maybe get another guy or two over the next couple of years in the mid rounds or whatever, where they usually are pretty good, they can work on that. But the thought that okay, Love is going to be a thing, but we really need to get him more weapons. I don't think, at least right now, that's the case. So that's pretty exciting to see. It's really just focusing on getting the defense to. I mean, again, it's just. I just feel like situationally, it's like if a team needs to get something done against them, they will always do it,
Yeah.
basically every time, and that's the problem. Where it's like, sure, maybe for 3 quarters you can tighten up when you have to, or this that, but when it's like it comes down to it whether it's a third or a fourth down, or they need to get some points, they just give it up 9 out of 10 times. And Joe Barry, it's one thing if we could sit there and say it was execution or the offense just made great plays. But when everyone watching the game all immediately say the same thing about the way you're calling your defense, like that's just what it is. And that's just the reality of it. So hopefully it doesn't completely screw them the rest of this year and they could still make it into the playoffs and then we'll worry about it. But yeah, looking ahead, you got the Bucks, Panthers, Vikings, and Bears. And as I mentioned earlier, 3-1 should just about guarantee getting them into the playoffs. So if you had to just take a broad look at the next 4 games, I guess where would you say your biggest concern is at? And I guess I could assume that Carolina will be your most confident game. So between Vikings, Bears, and Bucks, which one kind of has you the most nervous?
Probably Bucks. I think just because they're playing for a ton right now. That division sucks, and they're
Yeah,
still in contention for it. And with our injuries, I think that one probably scares me the most. I know that I'm not really scared of the Vikings. Obviously, the Panthers no. Bears, they're playing better, but I'm still never going to be like, oh my god, it's the Bears and it's at Lambeau. So I'm definitely a little bit more confident in that one too. Like I'd have to pick the Bucks as the game that if I had to pick one to be a loss, it would be that one. I'm still going to be probably. I mean, again, depending on the injuries for this week, but I think for all these games, as long as not all those guys are hurt, I think I'm probably going to predict a win for each one. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Buccaneers one is probably the least likely or most likely to be a loss. And then I wanted to quickly go back with Joe Barry.
yeah,
If as long as they make the playoffs, I think that stuff like this is actually like it's a good thing because it does get them to maybe move on from him.
yeah.
It's like if they just keep winning games where like okay, they don't allow that many points, but the defense kind of sucks, and it's like they're not actually playing good defense, but they win games. They're probably gonna keep him around, and it's like as long as I mean, as you said, as long as it doesn't screw them this year, like as long as they do get into the playoffs, okay, cool, But then it's like if they can lose a couple games along the way that get him fired, then it's kind of best of both worlds, and it's like so I won't be mad about this loss if they get in the playoffs. I'll be like, hey, that actually probably helps get him fired. Like that's probably a good thing. So it's hard to kind of balance the two things. Like you want the
Yeah.
team to win, but you're also like, I want the D coordinator gone, so I don't really want the defense to look too good.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but I think that, again, I'm not mad about this type of result as long as, I was disappointed that the offense didn't look better.
Yeah.
But as far as the defense, and this stuff happening, I'm fine with it as long as we do get in the playoffs, take care of business, get that far, and and then they do make that change in the offseason. I think it can be kind of the best of both worlds, and something that, again, I want them to do it sooner rather than later. It's like you've got this young team, young quarterback. I just want to see them as soon as they possibly can, giving him a competent, defense, competent coordinator, someone that you can trust more, and really just giving Jordan Love the best possible situation he can, and then you can really start to evaluate him as the years go on, and you get a couple years in, and it's like, and again, maybe he disappoints, maybe you see he's not the guy, but it's like I want to at least see him with the chance to be really, really good, with the chance to be on a contending type of team, not just this all young potential with a bad defense, bad coordinator, bad special teams, where you're like, well, even if he was good, the team wouldn't be that good. Like I want to see him with a chance to really thrive, and
Yeah.
then you can kind of see where he's at. So, yeah, I'm hoping they get rid of him.
Yeah, it's also it's not even just like potentially wasting Love, but all these first round picks on the defense, and
Yeah,
obviously, sure, some of them at this point are maybe a bit older, but there is a ton of very young talent. All definitely a ton still in their first contract, and it's like I don't need these guys to get wasted on Joe
yeah,
Barry, or also if some of them just look really bad, and then we make this evaluation where it's like, well, you just look terrible, but they could just be schemed up in all the wrong
yep,
ways. So whatever has to be done, like of course you want to see them win, but I don't disagree that if they're going to look back on the season and look at a game like yesterday, or some of the other awful games you've seen this year, and just be like, look, we're top 10 in this and top 12 in that, and all these great things, but you did this versus the Giants, you did this versus the Raiders, you did whatever it was. Like Joe Barry, like it just needs to be done. And even though part of me is like so given into the fact that this team won't do what I want or what I think most people wants. But I do feel like Matt LaFleur, if there's ever anyone on this team, like if he's ever, usually he's always like, it's me, it's my fault. But it feels like he'll be quicker to kind of throw shade at Joe Barry more than anyone else. And not just what he said today, where he kind of did throw Barry under the bus for a good reason. But I feel like throughout for sure this season, he's kind of been like, at the press conference being like, yeah, I mean, the defense was just not good enough, or like the play calling or the scheme, whatever we were doing. So hopefully LaFleur is just at his end with Joe Barry and finally brings that to an end, because I just don't think there's any way you're going to compete for a title or anything real with Joe Barry as your defensive coordinator. It's that simple for me. And I think you agree with that. So right now, 6-7. Going to play Tampa next week. Real quick, I mean, we are the 7th seed, which is great. Do you understand how is it that we are the 7th seed when the Falcons are 6-7 and they beat us? Not really sure how that works. Any idea on that?
I think, yeah, I don't know actually. That actually
Right?
would make, because isn't it head to head tiebreaker?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Usually, yeah, it goes head to head, and then it'll go to like conference record or something. But so
because
that's
I saw that yesterday too, and I was kind of confused. I was like, we're still in the 7th spot. Like
yeah.
I thought we
I
would
mean, I'm
fall
not
out for a little bit.
complaining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
So whatever, a Falcons. I mean, no one wants to see the Falcons in the playoffs anyway, just for Arthur Smith to hand the ball off to John Smith instead of Bijan Robinson. So right now we're still in it. If you take care of business, they will make the playoffs. So hopefully that is what we see. But before we go, Nathan, I have to say, very fun and impressive video you put out last week after the Chiefs game, the Jurassic Park one. I enjoyed that
thanks.
one. That was great work. That was fun to see. But before we head out, we'd like to just quick prediction for the upcoming week, a little score prediction. So how do you see this Bucks game going? Obviously, injuries will play a factor, but at least as of today, hoping that most of those guys can make it out there. How do you see it going?
Yeah, assuming most of them can make it out there, I do think we'll bounce back. I think we'll get a win. I would put it somewhere along the lines of like a 23 to 23-17, 24-20, something like that. You know, I don't think it'll be super high scoring or super low scoring. I think we're both kind of in the middle, kind of on both ends. It's like I don't think either team has a great offense. I don't think either team has a great defense, but they're not terrible either. So I'm gonna go in the middle, but I do think Packers can take care of business at home. But I mean, Rashad White's been good lately. I'm worried that he's gonna run all over us. I'm worried about Mike Evans a little bit. You know, there's definitely stuff that scares me a little bit that I could see us losing this game, but I do think they'll bounce back. I think Love will look better. He'll be more on point, and we can get another dub.
Yeah, the Bucks. I mean, their secondary has been really bad this year. They have a pretty good run defense, but yeah, I think Love, after the way he played last night, will bounce back in a nice way. Yeah, I was thinking around the same. I was thinking like 24-21, so kind of around the same spot. But obviously, get a win this week, and then you got Carolina next week. So they could have a nice little bounce back spot here as long as they take care of business versus the Bucks. But Nathan, before we head out, once again, just want to really thank you for coming on and taking the time. This was, a good conversation. It's always fun doing shows with you and everyone. As you can see, to follow Nathan at the bottom of the screen at Nathan Marzion on Twitter. But anything else, Nathan, that you're working on right now? Anything you want to plug before we head out?
I mean, I'm doing some stuff on Pack a Day podcast, which I'm sure people are familiar with. I do the Friday episode with, I do it with Shanna and Monty. And then I do my Buck stuff. I do some writing at behindthebucks.com. I do, some podcasts. It's called the Green and Growing podcast with my guy Sparky from Bucks Radio. So doing some Buck stuff, some Packer stuff, and kind of have that going on all throughout the season. It's, this is one of the best times of year. It's all ramping up. You get everything at the same time. Marquette basketball is good. So we're, that's going on too. So college basketball and college football bowl games coming up. There's just a lot going on, and I'm very excited. I'm always tweeting about sports, and it's the best time of the year for sports right now, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. Really, anytime you got football going on, but then you add some basketball to it, it's a pretty perfect combination. So make sure to follow Nathan on Twitter, check out his writing, and of course, like Nathan said, I'm sure most of you already follow Pack a Day Podcast, but check out his weekly episodes, and just make sure to, of course, follow the show on Twitter at @thepack_show. Do people actually say X? I refuse to be like.
No, I always just, every time we do, like I do podcasts and stuff and people want to promote it and they say X, I'm like, no, it's Twitter. It's Twitter.
It can't be a name if it's one letter. It's not even, it doesn't make sense. It's just so stupid.
And once something sticks, it's like, you can't really change it. It's like, no matter what they change it to, even if it was like a more catchy name, it's Twitter. Like that's what it's known as. That's what it is. But
it's, I don't know. Look, Elon Musk, he's an interesting guy, but yeah. So follow the show there and give me a follow at @BookofEli_NFL. Again, Nathan, thank you. Everyone who tuned in, appreciate you. Obviously, again, not the tone of the show I was maybe expecting going into it, but hopefully next week we have a bit more of a positive episode. But until then, everyone, have a good night and go Pack Go.